After spending 10 years as a professional triathlete and taking 2 degrees in sports science and physiotherapy, I'm gonna show you the only 4 steps you need to take to fix your running form. And then I'm gonna give you a 5-minute routine that will improve your running economy in just a few short weeks. But first, we need to take a look at what the science even says about changing our running form. A scientific review from 2024 looked at 52 studies on running biomechanics or running form and how it affects our running economy. It found that running form can explain 4 to 12% of how much energy we use when we're running. So why do so many people and even some individual studies say that you should not change your running form? I'll give you my take on it. It's because of something called motor skills. Imagine you want to learn a new motor skill like playing the guitar. For you to be able to play the guitar and sing along to your favorite tunes, you first have to go through 3 different learning stages. The first one is called the cognitive stage. In this stage, you need to use all of your focus on where your hands and fingers are placed so you don't make any mistakes. This uses a ton of energy and you are not very efficient. But after a few weeks of training, you become more efficient and then you move on to learning stage number 2. This is called the associative stage. As you continue practicing playing the guitar, then your transition between chords and your strumming becomes so much better. Now you spend less time thinking about where your hands and fingers are and you start to think about challenging yourself and doing more and more complex movements. Until one day you find yourself in what's called the autonomous stage. With enough practice, one day you can play all the songs you want and you can just sing along and you don't even have to think about how you play the guitar. In this stage, you are very efficient. The problem with some people's experience and some studies is that when you change your running form, you're going straight to stage number 1, but they expect to be in stage number 3. But just like when trying to play the guitar for the first time, when you change up your running form, then you're going to be extremely inefficient at first. But if you change your running form to something that is more biomechanically efficient, then over time, maybe weeks or months, you're going to enter stage 3, the autonomous stage, and then you'll start to run faster. At least that's what I experienced with my own running, and I've seen so many athletes that I've coached over the years who have the exact same experience. So how do we improve our running form to become more efficient? Step number 1 is to find out how you're currently running. There are 2 ways to assess your running form, and I'm gonna teach you both. For the first one, you need a treadmill and a camera, and the second one you can do from the comfort of your own home. If you got access to a treadmill, you want to film a side view, a view from the front, and a view from the back. You also want to film in as high frames per second as possible. I like to use 120 frames per second or higher. While it's easiest to do on a treadmill, if you have a friend who can follow you when you run, like on a bike, and then film you from the side and from the front and from the back, that's even better. And that's because on a treadmill, you don't have to extend at your hip because the treadmill can do it for you. So just imagine that every time you land on the treadmill, if you just relax, then your feet will still move behind you. And if you are outside, then you have to do that actively. Now that you got your footage, the first thing you want to look at is your stride. The best biomechanical way to run is to land just underneath your center of gravity, and then when your feet are in the air, you want to relax if you're a distance runner. Now, when I first started running, I had what's called an overstride, which meant that I landed way out in front of my body. So I needed to find ways to land closer to that center of gravity line. Research has shown that if you increase your steps per minute by 10%, then if you tend to have an overstride, that will help you with your running economy. For me, that meant changing my steps per minute from 160 to 180 at the same pace. So instead of doing 160 steps at 5 minutes per kilometer, then I did 180 steps still at 5 minutes per kilometer. When I did that, I started to shorten my stride in front of my body, landing more underneath the center of gravity. For some people, it helps to have the mental image of landing behind you. So instead of thinking that you need to land right underneath the center of gravity, then try to have this mental image of your feet actually landing behind you. Which brings me to the second way you can assess your running form. And for that, you need your running shoes. Now, this will only work if you actually run in your shoes, but if you do, you can take a look at the bottom here and then you can see where they are worn out. And that is a strong indicator of how you're actually running. So if we look at my shoes, then it's worn out here and up here. So what we want to see if we want to be a midfoot striker and land underneath our body is that this right here is worn out and this up here. So we sort of do this roll off up to the toe and then do our lift off. I even got a foot strike analysis done once, which showed me exactly how I was running and the biomechanical right way to run. But I just feel like taking your shoes is better because this is a real-time feedback on how you're running for the last couple of months. Now you can also look at the top. I've seen multiple people have holes in the shoes right here with the big toe. And yeah, that's a problem because when you do that, it means that when you're lifting your feet, you're actually also lifting your toes, and that is just wasted energy. And I've seen a lot of people who do this, they get shin splints. And as soon as they start working on motor control of their feet so they can lift their feet off the ground without flexing their toes, then it seems like the shin splints start to go away because it's a lot of strain. If you do 160 or 180 steps per minute, and then you do sort of this movement or from the toes every single time, that's a lot of strain on your shin. Now, it's important to note that different shoes can help you with different forms. So this shoe with a big drop, that is not great if you want to train landing midfoot, because this big drop, you can imagine that it's so much easier to land on your heel if you got those. So if you were to practice landing midfoot and landing underneath your center of gravity and you have a hard time, then I would try to at least have one pair of shoes that don't have this enormous drop, and then you can work your way up to that drop over time. Which brings me to step number 2. Once you know how you run, you need to find ways on how to improve that. For example, if you see a hole in the top of your shoe here, you need to work on motor control. So that could be lifting your big toe, just doing that. It could be lifting the other toes without lifting your big toe. It could be doing a lunge step and then still being able to relax your feet and your toes, and then doing a running jump step and then starting to run a bit like that. Over time, just building it up to running while still relaxing in those toes. If you have trouble doing heel strikes, I would do something similar. I would try to do some lunges first, see if I could land underneath my body, and then doing some run jumps, and then maybe doing 5 minutes of running, and then just building upon that from there. I've created a running form cheat sheet with the 13 most common running form mistakes and how to fix them, and I'll leave a link to that in the description below and in the top comment. And if you decide to get some shoes that has a smaller drop, then try to build your way up to those super shoes over time, because even though they are an expensive option, in reality, they help you run faster. In fact, a study from 2024 found that even recreational runners can run significantly faster in super shoes compared to just normal running shoes. But they come at a cost, and fixing your running form is free. The most common mistakes I see are the overstride, and then a weak hip flexion and a weak hip extension, and then no glute activation. To fix that, you can do what I did and start doing specific exercises like run jumps, clams, glute bridges, and lying hip abductions. Besides changing your running form, choosing the right shoes, maybe doing some exercises, there's one more thing that you can do that will make a huge difference, and almost nobody is doing it. And I don't know why, because it will make you so much faster. Which brings me to step number 3. When I started improving my running, I started getting invited to better and better training groups. And I noticed something strange. The better the runners, the more time they would spend not running. So if they had 2 hours of practice, they would spend 30 minutes on doing something called running drills. And it's a big thing in the running world. So why is that? You see, like we discussed, running is a motor skill. In fact, it is a very complex motor skill. It requires you to activate a bunch of different muscles at different times and relax in others. And the best runners in the world know this. So they spend a ton of time perfecting their motor skill by doing coordination exercises or muscle activation, and they do it at any chance they get. To take advantage of this, just spend 5 minutes each time you run doing some coordination exercises, and I promise you, as soon as you see the results, you will never want to stop. But I promised you a 5-minute routine that has been scientifically proven to improve your running economy in just a few weeks. So that brings me to step number 4. I've always looked for small protocols that I could take advantage of to gain an edge on my competitors. So when this scientific review came out in 2021, then I just found a new protocol to add to my arsenal. The researchers found that jump training is very effective in improving athletic performance in endurance runners, and it could be done with as little as 5 minutes per day. Let me show you how. This study from 2023 showed a specific protocol that we can use for 6 weeks that will help improve our running economy. Week 1, you do 5 sets of 10 seconds of continuous jumping with 50 seconds of rest. Then every week you add a bit of sets and rest a bit less, like you can see in this protocol. Focus on minimal contact with the ground and maximum force. And that's it. But knowing how to assess your running form doesn't really matter if you don't know what a world-class running form looks like. So I'll break down exactly what that looks like in this video right here.